All right, let's get right into it. You know that moment? You're about to sign a big contract, but then there's that extra little promise on the side, that handshake deal. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the secret legal life of those side deals.
Just imagine you're buying a used car. You got the official contract in hand, everything's laid out, but right before you sign, the seller says, hey, you know what? I'll throw in the winter tires for free. That promise, right there, that's exactly what we're talking about today.
So, in the legal world, that little side promise actually has a fancy name, a collateral contract. Think of it as a mini agreement whose whole job is to convince you, to give you that final nudge you need to sign the main one. It's the little extra something that seals the deal. But here's the real question, right? When does that handshake deal, that verbal promise, actually hold up in court? There are a ton of myths floating around, but it turns out there's one single, absolutely essential rule that decides if that side deal is legit, and we are going to find it. Okay, so first things first, let's play detective for a minute. We're going to look at some false leads and clear up the most common misunderstandings about what makes these side deals work. So the first and biggest myth is probably this one. If it's not in writing, it doesn't count. And you know what? That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? A serious promise should probably be on paper. But here's the thing. While getting promises in writing is always a good idea, I mean, for proof, it's not the ultimate deal breaker. A totally verbal promise can, believe it or not, still create a legally binding collateral contract. The law does recognize spoken agreements. All right, on to our next false lead. Do these side deals have to be about cash? Does it only count if someone promises you a discount or some kind of rebate? Nope, not at all. A collateral contract can be about pretty much anything you value. It could be a promise to do something, like throwing in those winter tires, or providing a service, like a free oil change, or even guaranteeing a condition, like promising an apartment will be freshly painted before you move in. And for our last myth, this one's a little out there, but it's a misconception that pops up. Does the side agreement have to be this huge, complicated thing, maybe even longer than the main contract itself? Yeah, we can put this one to bed real quick. The length is completely, totally irrelevant. What makes a contract valid is its substance, what was actually agreed to, not how many pages it has. Okay, so with all those common myths out of the way, our investigation leads us right here to the big reveal. Let's look at the one single principle that truly, actually matters. And here it is, the golden rule. For a side deal to be legally valid, it cannot clash with, undermine, or in any way contradict what is written in the main agreement. The two have to be able to exist together, peacefully. So let's go back to our car example, because this is where it gets really important. If your main written contract clearly says the car is sold as is with absolutely no warranty, but the seller verbally promises, oh, don't worry, I guarantee it'll run perfectly for a year, well, you have a direct contradiction. And in that fight, the law is almost always going to side with the written as-is clause and just ignore the verbal promise. So what does this all mean for you in the real world? How do you use this knowledge the next time you're about to make a deal? It really comes down to a simple 3-step reality check. First, you've got to read the main contract, especially the fine print. Second, listen carefully to any and all verbal promises being made. And third, and this is the most important part, check if that verbal promise goes against anything you just read. If it does, be really careful, because it probably won't be enforceable later on. So why is this rule so important? Well, it's pretty much the bedrock of contract law. It's there to protect the finality and integrity of a written agreement. The whole idea is that once something is put in writing, that document should be the one source of truth. It prevents endless arguments over who said what, gives everyone certainty, and makes sure you can't just undo a formal contract with a casual comment. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Think about the agreements you've made in your own life, big and small. Were there any side promises involved? And now that you know the golden rule, which of those side deals might be worth a closer look?